Welcome to Here's the Deal, a pod chunk brought to you by Leadership Beyond Sport. I'm Laura Barnes, and today we're going to talk about being coachable. What exactly does it mean to be coachable? It's not just for athletes. A lot of us get coached. In fact, all of us get coached at some point or another in every aspect of life. Coaching is also not limited to the playing field, the workforce. It really happens anywhere. Think about when you learned how to drive. You were being coached. You were being taught new skills. We are also coached in relationships. When we learn how to interact and engage with our significant other, we are being coached on how to have a relationship with that individual. So coaching happens in all different forms, in all different parts of our lives. And the thing that makes it challenging for so many people is that it puts you in a very vulnerable space. Why does it put you in a vulnerable space? Well, because quite simply, when you open yourself up to coaching and feedback, which is essentially, they're the same thing. Coaching and feedback are essentially the same thing. And when you open yourself up to that, you're also saying, I realize that I'm imperfect and that I might have screwed that up. I might have missed the mark. I might not have been fully invested, fully engaged, or fully committed to the project, the situation, whatever it is. And as a result of my actions, we may have gotten a less than desirable outcome. So that's the vulnerability piece, is being able to say, I realize that I played a role in whatever this is not going the way we wanted it to, or the way you wanted it to, if you're talking to somebody else specifically, like a boss or a manager. So how do we get good at being coached? How do we become coachable? First and foremost, be open to feedback. There's a phrase that a lot of coaches use. I've used it numerous times. I employ it in my life when I'm being coached or when I'm working with a coach. And it's take what works and leave the rest. Be open to hearing and receiving everything that comes up. You want to hear all the information. You want to get the feedback. Not all of it is going to apply to you. If you're in a team dynamic situation where you had a very specific role and there were 2 or 3 or 4 other people who had their roles, the ultimate outcome may not be 100% due to your role. So the feedback you're going to get may or may not fully apply to you, but hear it all. Take all of it in, and again, take what works and leave the rest. So apply what is applicable. Apply what fits to your situation, your role in the experience, and let other people take ownership of their role and what may or may not have gone well based on the feedback you're getting. So that's the first one, is just being open to the feedback, being receptive, having the conversations when someone says, hey, can I give you some feedback on that project? Or, I really have an issue with how that was said. Can we talk about it? Being open to it and saying, yeah, sure, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. It's literally that simple. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. That doesn't mean that you're going to automatically agree with the person. That doesn't mean that you're going to change everything about who you are to make them more comfortable or to make it work better. It simply means you're open to hearing what they have to say. You're willing to receive information and input from an outside source. The second way to be coachable is to own your role. And I talked about this a moment ago. Again, not everything is yours to own. You are not 100% responsible or accountable for the outcome of every situation, every scenario, across every part of your life. You're not. You are responsible for your part, however. So your energy, your effort, your knowledge, skills, information, you are responsible for those pieces. You are responsible for your component of execution. And that could be in a group project at work. That could be in a relationship setting where you didn't do the thing you said you were going to do. You have to own that. So own your role. Own what parts are yours. But also be aware that you don't have to own everything for everyone. And owning your role is really critical because it's also saying, or rather not saying, well, that's not my fault. Deflecting is one of the biggest ways to not own your part. So a great example of this, if you are in a situation where somebody says, hey, your team was supposed to deliver X, Y, and Z, and we only got X and Y. So what happened to Z? If you're the team leader, you can't say, well, Z wasn't my part. I gave that to Natalie and she didn't do it, so that's on her. No, you still have a role in that, right? If you're the team lead saying, I dropped the ball and I didn't follow up with Natalie as closely as I should have. And so unfortunately, that's why we didn't have the deliverables. So owning your role, if your role was to supervise, if your role was to coordinate, if your role was simply to communicate and you didn't do that effectively, it's okay to say, I was not effective in my communication strategy and I need to work on that. So again, that's not saying that you're owning the other person's lack of follow through or their lack of communication. You're simply saying, my strategy wasn't as effective as I thought it would be. So own your part. If it's an argument with a significant other, being able to say, I was wrong in the places that you were wrong, or I understand how you're feeling, or I could have done X better, I could have done Z better. Own your part. When you own your role in whatever the situation is, people then see you as a person of integrity. They see you as a person who they can approach about challenging, uncomfortable subjects, and you're not going to deflect or defend. Those are two really common behaviors that people exhibit when they're not coachable. Deflecting is, well, it was because so-and-so didn't do their part that I couldn't do my part. So that's deflecting, when you sort of blame other people. Defending is when you look at the situation and you say, but I did everything I could. You defend your actions. Even though your actions had a poor outcome or a poor result, you still defend why they were the right thing to do. And they might have been. But defending it to the point that you try to make the other person wrong for coming to you with feedback, that's when it becomes an issue. So if you defend your actions to the point that someone else is now wrong, that may or may not be the right way to go about it. So again, own your role, own your part in the situation or the experience, and own the fact that you may have made a mistake. Own the fact that maybe you didn't make a mistake, maybe it really was on someone else, but you still have to own your part in that overall occurrence. The third way to become coachable is to ask questions in order to grow. Ask questions that will help you to not just hear the feedback, but really apply it and implement it in the future. Because ultimately, when you're a manager or an employer, you want people who are coachable because you want them to stay. Retention is huge in the workforce. It's also huge in relationships, right? Like, most people don't really enjoy going through breakups and then a new relationship and then another breakup. It's a little bit exhausting. So retention is a really big component. And the more coachable you are, the more retainable you are. The more people want you to stick around. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If you are coachable, even in an academic group project setting, when you have those same classmates in the next class, they're going to want to work with you on the next group project because, hey, you took feedback and you were cool about it. Same thing in a relationship. If I have an issue with you and I can come to you and say, hey, this is a challenge for me in our relationship, and I see you actively trying to improve, I'm going to be more willing to stick it out and stay with you, even though there are going to be highs and lows. Same thing in a job. When you're coachable, they think, oh, okay, this person can be trained. They can be developed, which means that we should keep them around. So what questions can you ask to help yourself grow and to be more coachable? The first question is, how would you like me to do this next time? Very, very direct. How would you like me to do this next time? Especially if it's a common occurrence or if it's something that you do regularly. Could be as simple as formatting a report. And keeping in mind that not everybody hears and receives information the same way. So how you did it might have been just fine for your last boss or your last job, but the nuances and the slight differences with the new job, you might need to adapt your style so that it fits the receivers a little bit better. So how would you like me to do this next time is a great way to not only be coachable, but also to put a little bit of responsibility back on the person who received the information or saw the outcome, for them to give you some really concrete ways that you can improve. Second question, what method or strategy has worked for you in the past? A lot of times when you're working in an environment, you are being managed by somebody who's done the job themselves. So asking this question is saying, based on your experience and what you've done previously, what strategy should I use? And again, this is just about giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this is what worked for me. Maybe you could try that. Third question you can ask, is there anyone I should reach out to so I can learn more in this area? And again, this is going to be more on the work side. You may not want to do this in a relationship setting where you'd be reaching out to an ex, but is there anyone I should reach out to so I can learn more in this area? Is there anybody who has more knowledge than I do who can help me be better? That's what you're asking with this question. Or actually, a better way to say that is, who should I reach out to so I can learn more? Keep it open-ended, because is there anyone? It could be a yes or a no. Who should I reach out to so I can learn more in this area? Fourth question that you can ask is, what is your desired outcome for this project? And this is actually a great question to use at the beginning of a project, especially if you've had issues in the past where you didn't quite meet expectations. What is your desired outcome for this project, for this experience, this event, whatever it is, this relationship? What is your desired outcome? So if somebody can tell you, well, we want outcomes A, B, C, and D, that helps you to frame your approach. So question 4 is a great question to ask in the planning stages as you're going into a situation, especially if you're new to the organization, new to the team, new to the group, whatever it might be. And then number 5, this is especially important if you are the person who needs the atta-girls and the atta-boys, you need the pat on the back to feel motivated and encouraged. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is 100% an acceptable way to operate, is to need a little bit of reassurance that like, hey, I don't totally suck. So can you tell me one thing I did well, or what is one thing I did well and one thing I can improve upon in the future? And again, when you say what is, as opposed to can you tell me, again, if I said to you, can you tell me one thing I did well? The person might say no. So leaving it open-ended. What is one thing I did well and one thing I can improve upon in the future? And you could make this a part of any situational debrief. I would say mostly in a professional setting, but you could even ask this about, in relationships. If you put together a great big birthday surprise or anniversary surprise for your significant other and you want to improve in the relationship, this would be an interesting question to ask. Hey, what's one thing I did really well with that anniversary surprise? And what's one thing that I could improve upon? Again, you're keeping yourself open to the feedback. And going back to what I said at the beginning, take what works and leave the rest. So there might be some things that they suggest you change that physically you can't, right? You may physically not be able to, or you may not have that skill set at this time. So it's something that would be a longer range development. But one thing I did well, what's one thing I did well and one thing I can improve upon in the future? The reason I love these questions is because it not only puts you in a situation of, again, owning your role in developing and growing, puts you in the driver's seat of your own development, it also engages the other person who's giving you the feedback initially. Your boss, your manager, your significant other, your friend, your coworker, your partner, your, whatever it is, you're saying, hey, I want to have a dialogue here. They're coming to you and they're saying, something didn't go quite right. Can we talk about it? Or we're talking about it. If it's a boss, it's usually like, we're going to talk about this. You don't have a choice in the matter. So we're going to talk about this. And you then have the opportunity to say, great, let's have a dialogue about it. Instead of you just blasting me with all the things I did wrong, which is fine. I need to hear that. But now let's talk about ways that I can improve from your perspective. Because one of the hardest things about receiving feedback and being coached is when you're simply given you didn't do that right. And that's it. There's no other, this is how I'd like to see it done differently. These are ways you can improve. Not everyone's great at giving feedback. Sometimes all they know to do is to say, you didn't do it right. And I've even been in situations where I asked a manager or a supervisor, okay, I hear you. Can you tell me what you would like me to do differently? And I've gotten responses of, well, you should just know. In a relationship, it might be, well, if you don't know, then I can't help you. So keep in mind, you may experience situations where they're giving you feedback of, I don't like how this ended up, but they can't actually tell you what they wanted you to do differently or how you could have improved. And it might be a challenging situation. And in those situations, again, being coachable, you then have the opportunity to say, okay, in order to improve, I need more direction. So, how can we work together to make sure that happens? Being coachable is about asking for what you need in addition to just receiving feedback. You're not a punching bag. You are not meant to sit in a room with a supervisor or your significant other and be told all the ways that you suck and you're terrible and you did a bad job. You're not a punching bag. However, in emotionally charged situations, in situations that had a very negative outcome where people are not thinking clearly, you do have the opportunity to turn the tables a little bit and be proactive in getting more feedback, more direction, more of what you need in order to be successful. So, these are my tips on how to be coachable. Again, be open to the feedback, be willing to hear whatever is said, and use that as a platform for you to grow from. Number two, own your role. Own the parts that are yours to own. Take full responsibility and accountability for your part in the project and identify ways that you can grow within that scope. And number three, ask questions. Ask questions to get concrete feedback, to get detailed information so that you're not just trying the next iteration of it with no clue what that should look like. I hope this helps you as you're developing in your career, in your personal relationships to become more coachable and a better teammate, spouse, partner, coach, manager, whatever it is you're working towards. I would love to hear about ways that you've been coached both positively and maybe some challenges that you've experienced in terms of receiving feedback. And how do you think you do when it comes to being coached? Can't wait to connect with you next time. Thank you so much for joining Here's the Deal. I'm Laura Barnes, and we'll see you next time.